Welcome back, this is Chessometrics, I'm FIDE Master Samuel Weber, and in this video we're going to continue our journey in the theoretical rook endgames with the advanced Philidor position. Let's take a look. So this is the advanced Philidor. The difference to the normal Philidor 6th rank defense is that the king is already advanced to the 3rd rank. So this means you cannot get the rook on the h3 square and cut the king because it's already too late. If we play a check, then he goes for f3 and has this mate threat and we will lose the game. So we have to really act carefully and really remember certain key moments. So this is the first moment, of course. So you have to remember that it's the easiest way. There's two ways of defending, but you should always play on principles so that you remember the ideas, and then in time trouble, for example, you don't need to think. Yeah, you can just rely on your intuition because you knew these patterns before and you can then apply them in your own games. So the move is rook to f8. Siegbert Tarrasch's rule, rook behind pass pawns. The idea with that move is that after rook a1 check, king g2 is forced, you can control the square f3. So the idea of rook f8 is to stop f3 check, and then black would be able, let's say I play rook g8, a bad move. Black would be able now to go f3 check, and then to go, let's say king f2, and reach the Lucena position, which we will discuss in a later video. And that would be winning for black. So we should play rook f8. And now we have this defensive method that we stop f3 check, or we stop the advance of the f-pawn in general. If he plays f3, we can just play rook e8 check and use the eternal checks from the Philidor defense, which we know already, and it will be a draw. If he gives a check, that's what we just saw. So there's only one move left. He can try king f3. Now he threatens a checkmate. So we have to move the king to g1 or e1. If we go with rook e8, then he will give a check. We have to block. He goes to 8. No, sorry. Yes, here he can take, of course. And after takes, he can just exchange to a pawn endgame and win like that. So we cannot even defend passively. So passively is always a bad defense. Only with the knight or h-pawn or a pawn or knight pawn you can hold with passive defense, but this will be also discussed in a later video. So now let's come back to the position. White has a choice, going to e1 or g1. And the rule of thumb here is that you always go with the king to the short side, that means to g1, and with the rook to the long side, so that the rook can have a long distance of checks. Yeah, the check has to be 3 or more squares distance between king and rook. And then you always will be able to make a draw. So you go king g1, that's the first step. He gives a check, you go away. And now we see the point with the rook on f8. We stop king f2, approaching the Lucena. So we will stop him from reaching that. And if he were to go king e3, then we would be able to play king g2 and stop him again. We never change our defensive mechanism, never. That's very important to remember. You don't change it because you will just rely on your patterns. But if you change, then it might be a situation where you don't know exactly what to do, and with the nervous system going on and you're kind of nervous, you don't know what to do, time trouble, you might blunder. But here you can just rely on your patterns. So you will go king g2. So the only way of making progress is to play rook f1, to then be able to move the king and push the pawn and going to Lucena later. And once the rook is on f1, Yeah, there's always a drawback from a move. There's an idea and a drawback. So the drawback here is that we cannot defend the checks from the side. So white can very easily now use the longest distance. And if black were to move his king, then we would give checks eternally from the side this time. And if the king reaches our rook, we can happily play king g2 and pick up the pawn like this or like that. So that is also nice. So the last thing to remember is what happens if he goes rook e1 to block the checks. Then we just very happily, and I think it's the most easiest solution, go back to f8. We just go back to f8 in order to be able to stop his king from advancing once again. And if he were to move king e3, then we again use the same method of stopping f3. And if he tries to protect the pawn and advance, then we again use the same method so that the king cannot advance. If he goes here, we give a check. If he goes back, we go back, so that nothing changes. If he goes to e2, king g2. We don't change our defensive setup. And I think that's about it. This is all we need to know. So let's back up and take a moment of silence again and think about what we just learned. So the first step is Siegbert Scharrer's rule, rook behind the castle, to stop f3 after the check on a1. So the only way of trying for black is king f3. And now we use this method, the important method of this position. King on the short side, rook on the long side. King g1, check. And once the rook moves, then we go with the rook to the long side. And if he tries to block, this is the last key moment. Then we go back and stop him from advancing the king and the pawn. And always when he moves the king, we still keep our defensive setup with king g2 and rook on f8. Or just rook on the f file. So, first rule, rook behind passed pawn. Second rule, king to the short side, rook to the long side. Third rule, checks from the long side if he moves the rook away. And if he tries to block the checks, then we go back to f8, back behind the pawn. Yeah, depending on which file the pawn is standing. Yeah, it can happen that it's on the e file or d file. Doesn't matter, you go behind the passer. And then the last thing is that you never change your defensive setup. And I think if you just learn these patterns, you will always be able to hold the draw in this position. So I hope you guys enjoyed the content. I will continue soon with some other videos, and also my girlfriend Katja will soon join me again, and then yeah, just follow us in the button below, and yeah, see you in the next video. Bye bye.